Welcome everybody to another episode of Free Thinkers Anonymous. This is your host Mike, along with my co-host Jeremy, and here we are discussing the current state of what's affecting the visual effects industry today.
The things that are just starting to really impact the industry are AI and unitization. So let's get into AI. Deepfakes. Deepfakes are a thing that really spiked maybe, I'd say probably about 4 years ago, somewhere around there, where you can take video footage and you can make anyone say anything. You can use existing video of politicians to make them say things that are completely contrary to what they actually believe. And people will believe that. Lately, there's actually been viral images, former President Trump hanging out with a bunch of attractive black people, either in the Oval Office, and it's all AI. It's all AI. Trump, all the black people, they're just digitally generated. That photo did not happen. It's not a photo, it's effectively a paint, but it looks like a photo. And it went viral because people thought it was real. People were trying to show, oh, Trump understands black people. Black people like hanging out with Donald Trump. It's the bandwagon marketing technique where, oh, other people that look like me like this thing. That must mean that I like this thing too, or I should at least give a chance to this thing to see if I like it, where otherwise I might have been staunchly against it. And for people that aren't trained in visual effects industry, people that aren't trained as digital artists, they might not be able to spot the difference, to spot what the flaws are with artificially generated imagery. So that's just my quick disclaimer. Don't trust the media that you consume for it to be real. Assume off the bat, if it looks too good to be true, it is. And if it looks super clean and super smooth, it's fake because the real world is not super clean and super smooth. The framing of photos is always going to have slight flaws to it. When it is AI, it won't because AI is set up to create visually pleasing images. So just be aware of that. There's a lot of other issues with AI generated imagery from the way that those tools are trained. They are trained on copyrighted material illegally. But because of the lack of transparency of AI companies, straight up lies from AI companies, and the lack of laws where it comes to AI, they've been able to get away with it up till now. That very likely is not going to continue, but up till now, these AI companies are training their models and making money off other people's work where they are not allowed to do that because you're not allowed to use somebody else's work unless they sell it to you. You couldn't use somebody else's thing unless they sell it to you. And some people will argue, oh, well, any art is derivative from things that other people consume. Only problem with that argument, which is very easy to see and obvious, is that there's always a human element to it and human experience that blends multiple things in a way that is kind of an X factor that AI will never have because that's inherent to the software. On top of that, it's not about the art that's generated, it's about the tool that's developed. And whether or not AI art is a problem, I think it can be. It also doesn't necessarily need to be. But these AI tools that are currently existing are massive problems because they are profiting off of other people's work without paying them for it. So the tool itself is the problem, not the result of the tool as much. So some of the changes recently that you'll see with AI is that they are understanding that there are massive limitations in what they can actually do. Like for instance, AI related companies have lost $190 billion over the past quarter. Nobody's talking about it. Why? Because they want AI to thrive. And anybody that is supporting AI will support it to their dying breath. They want it to succeed because it means that anybody can be an artist. All you need to do is type in a few words and you can make anything, and it's amazing. But that's not the way that art works. Art takes time, art takes effort. And if it doesn't take time and effort, it is worthless. Because why should anybody care about it? Why should anybody try to enjoy it? People don't go to the movies because they look pretty 90% of the time. They go to the movies because they get a story where they see character development, they can relate to the characters. There's at least some element to these films that pulls you in. It's not just a nonsensical, pretty picture on the screen. And that human element to the writing, that human element to the directing, the acting, that all comes together to make something that's worth watching. But I mean, if you want nonsense to just be fed into your mind that doesn't actually get you to learn anything about yourself, about the human condition, about what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy, the things you support, the things you stand against, have at it and turn your brain off. But I strongly support people living life intentionally, which includes consuming entertainment intentionally, just from my personal stance. So despite AI companies losing all this money, and also, side note, behind the scenes, AI companies have been telling their marketing departments to tone down promises on what AI can do because they're realizing that AI can't do as much as they say it can. Like they're acting like, oh, we can create this fully usable video game with just an hour's worth of working on prompts. But is it actually usable? Like, does it have a story? Does it have assets that interact the way that users would want it to interact? Does it have any kind of logic to it? Is it worth doing? That's what it all kind of comes down to. So if it doesn't all tie together in a logical way, people aren't going to play it, even if it technically is playable. Also, they're realizing that they're promising so much that people are undervaluing AI. They're like, oh, well, if we could just type in a few little things and do it, then it shouldn't cost us very much, right? Why would we pay a lot of money for something if we can just spend an hour on it and get months to years worth of work from an entire studio? That doesn't make any sense. We shouldn't be paying much at all for that. That's easy. But then they're seeing their profit margins go down. People are undervaluing them because their marketing pitch is everything is easy and it doesn't take much. It's like, okay, well, if everything's easy and it doesn't take much, then why would we pay a lot for it? So people are paying less for AI related stuff, which means it's being undervalued, which I think is probably more accurate to what it's actually worth, but they're destroying their own industry. In the meantime, though, we're seeing the results in the VFX industry to do the opposite, where in gaming and VFX, there's an estimated 62,000 entertainment jobs in film, TV, music, and gaming that will be gone or significantly disrupted by AI within the next 3 years, just in California, according to a survey by industry leaders in every single one of those industries. Primary jobs that are getting hit: VFX, which is 3D modeling, character and environment design, compositing, tool development, animation, rigging, concept art and visual development, and lighting and texture generation. So 10 entire professions in the VFX industry are going to be hit by the only other three professions that were listed were voiceover actors, sound design, and script writing. So 10 out of 13 jobs are in the VFX industry. So when you see 62,000 workers, not workers, jobs, meaning these aren't workers that are being fired. These are entire jobs that are being removed, meaning 62,000 workers are going to be fired and no one's coming in to replace them. Those are jobs that are gone for good. And that estimate goes up to 204,000 jobs if we're including the entire US. Let's just assume there's an equal amount of people working in each of these different professions. That translates to what? That's effectively three quarters. So let's say 150,000 people in the VFX industry are going to be fired in the next 3 years. 150,000 VFX workers are going to lose their jobs, according to industry leaders. And that's the thing. It's not just about what is logically going to make sense. It's about what the industry leaders think is going to make sense because they're the ones that own the companies. They're the ones that decide whether or not somebody gets hired. So if they think AI is going to replace these people, then they might fire those people before they actually see whether or not AI can replace those people, because worker hours, worker pay is the biggest drain on a company's resources. So if you can get rid of 80% of your staff, that makes the longevity of your company extend by months to years. So why would you not do that? Because that gives you months to years to test out AI to see if it can pick up for those people. And then at the end of those months to years, if you made a mistake, you hire them back. It's fine. That's the way that they're looking at it. Financially, it makes more sense to fire 150,000 VFX workers and maybe hire them back if they actually need them back than it does to just see whether or not it works before they do that. Financially, it makes more sense to screw over those 150,000 people. So, something to think about when it comes to AI, when it comes to companies using AI, if they can profit off of this, which they are going to significantly try to over the next 3 to 4 years, maybe even 3 to 5 years, a lot of AI stuff is going to come out because the people that support AI support it wholeheartedly in the same way that they supported cryptocurrency. And it's a scam. 99% of it is a scam. There is no value to it aside from the tools that can be used to better the work that's already being done. It's about speeding up the process of the artists that are already working. It's not about replacing the artists. And if you're speeding up the process, if you're making it more streamlined, if you're making it easier to do what we've been spending a lot of time doing, I think that works fine. And I think if we are going to be losing jobs, if AI is being used to streamline those processes, those jobs aren't going to disappear for good because other studios will start picking up. And those other studios that start picking up are going to hire more and more people. And all of the people that are displaced by AI are then going to be hired to utilize those AI tools to then continue to grow the industry. And the industry is going to keep growing significantly faster than it currently is. But if it is done unethically, like it is being done right now, it is going to destroy the industry. So, for anybody that's listening that doesn't know a lot about I would suggest highly looking at people that are critical of AI, because I will say the people that are supportive of AI are blind. I have not seen a single person that is supportive of AI that actually has a response for any of the criticisms of AI. It is just this pipe dream utopia of everybody's going to work in the best possible way for the lowest possible person instead of the super rich are going to use this to push out everybody else because it financially makes sense. And if you look at history, that's what's going to happen because that's what has happened in the past. That's what leaders are saying is going to happen in the near future. There's no reason to think that it's going to be anything other than that. It is not the great equalizer for the film industry like those people like to believe. But that doesn't mean that AI is inherently bad. It just means that it needs to be done carefully and intentionally in a way that actually supports the industry and the people that make the industry run, not the people that own the industry, because they don't make it run. They just have to provide the money. Yeah, sorry, I know that was a bit of a tirade there. AI is starting to affect the VFX industry in a largely negative way. We could potentially see the entire destruction of the VFX industry with the already tight profit margins. Then we had the pandemic, which meant less work. And then we had the strikes, which meant less work. And now we have potentially new strikes coming out from a few different production unions that we don't know how long they'll last. We don't know what they're really fighting for. At least I don't yet. I haven't had a chance to really look into them, but they have already talked about more strikes. So for people that are listening that want more entertainment, just be aware that you might, for yet another year, have significantly less to enjoy. And I would not put this on the people that are striking, as I said, with the writers and actors guilds, that it's not about blaming the people who are striking. It's about understanding the heart of the issue, which is generally predatory practices by those with money and power that are completely destroying the viability of entire industries. Because when residuals were a thing with broadcasting, with writers and actors, they were effectively building up their retirement with the projects they were working on. With streaming, they didn't get residuals anymore, or their residuals were next to nothing, which meant writers and actors no longer had a retirement plan. And all of that money that would have been going toward retirement was now going to executives. It wasn't like it was going to the streaming industry to make it cheaper for consumers. It wasn't like it was going to the streaming industry to make more content, better content, hire more people. No, it was literally just going straight into executives' pockets. So with these new strikes, I need to learn exactly what they're trying to fight for. We'll see.
So there was a camera company that they started off as a Kickstarter, and they made all these grand promises of being able to adjust the focal point on photos after the photo was taken. They used what they called light field technology, and they had their own proprietary tools, proprietary software, proprietary hardware. and they just kept promising more and more stuff. And a lot of people bought into it, and the demos that they would put out showing off the work that they could do. I know the people that were behind doing the visual effects on those, cleaning them up, trying to make them look a lot more impressive than they actually were. And nobody was told the visual effects were done to make it look better. And that company is Lytro, Lytro. And they went out of business back in 2018 because everybody saw that their cameras were garbage. They didn't record high resolution. The light balancing, the compression of the images was all horrible. The file formats were unusable in any of the software that currently existed. And it took so long to process the information that even doing effectively photogrammetry, or what would now be NERFs or Gaussian splatting, we have software that will do that for us. And their recording method was just so archaic by now that it was useless. It was beyond useless. And it kept being presented as this super futuristic, nobody could imagine how awesome this is kind of technology. And then the other one was Magic Leap, where they did exactly the same thing. They did visual effects on recorded footage, and they made it seem like these AR glasses were actually seeing all of these things happening in these real spaces. Only problem is the fidelity of the image wasn't anywhere near that. The technology wasn't actually built to assess the space that it was in well enough. It was nowhere near what they were presenting it could do. And they kept presenting that it could do that years before they even had an MVP, a market value product. But they were so good at lying about what they could pull off that they got billions and billions with a B of investment to get their hardware and software to the point where it would be a feasible application for people in general. That company actually is still around, but they came out with their first MVP back in, I want to say 2015. And less than 7 years later, they discontinued all support for that software and that hardware. So if you have their first version of their AI glasses, they're useless now. So good job for wasting $3,000 to $5,000 for a product that only lasted 7 years. They have now come out with their version 2, which is also about $3,000 to $5,000. So in other words, more expensive than an Apple Vision Pro. And what does it do other than what an Apple Vision Pro can do? Absolutely nothing. The only difference is that it is direct pass-through technology as opposed to camera recorded video of what's happening outside of you that's then processed properly to then be projected into your eyes as a video. But that's it. There's a slight lag in what's happening around you. The Apple Vision Pro that isn't present on their second iteration of the Magic Leap AI glasses. And the only reason they can justify even existing still is that they have effectively two purposes in the AI software that they have out there right now. The first one is first-person shooter experiences and not for video games. So training police officers, training the military, government contracts are a big thing. The other is in engineering, where you can take the engineering specs in a software like CAD and literally break apart the pieces using the software that they have to effectively explode these objects to where you can see each individual part and then move them back together using hand tracking technology, things like that. And it's a little bit easier to look at this object in a physical space like it exists around you and move it around than it does inside of a virtual reality space. However, you actually have more freedom inside of virtual reality space, so I don't know that it benefits you as much because, again, that little bit of lag with camera processing time is not really worth it to spend even more money on direct pass-through technology. So, and still, it's a multi-billion-dollar company that's valued at like $10 billion. And the market value product that it initially came out with was garbage and unusable by the general public. And the only people that really use it is the government. And the only reason why it made the money that it did was for military purposes, which goes to show you what our government is putting their money towards.
Yeah, because I was about to say it's so standard now. Everything you just mentioned, I'm like, dude, Apple has done that already. In case for people don't know, like, when you take pictures now, the reason why you have the three lenses is so that you can get different quality resolutions. You could zoom in as much as you want, but also there's different things that are in focus. So and you also have a depth map, which is generated that kind of guesses how far things are away from the camera. And that's what allows you to change what's in and out of focus in cameras today. And then the whole thing of tracking your eye placement, even though I'm terrified of the thing, the new headset that Apple came out with, that does an amazing job of tracking your eye movement. So you're selecting things just by looking at them. But there's a dozen or even more cameras tracking your eye movement within that device. So it's a very expensive. So yeah, like Jeremy said, millions and billions of dollars. Yeah, that's usually in research to develop this technology, but now it's here. I don't know how long ago that company was demoing that stuff. But yeah, that's a typical trick that technology companies would try to do is they would just show you demos. Nothing comes from the actual hardware. This is what we think it's going to do. And, I've worked at studios that have done demonstration videos as well. And yeah, there's a bunch of us visual effects artists putting together what this product should be able to do, what they're pitching. That doesn't mean that it's what it can actually do currently, or that's even something they are even close to achieving, but that's their goal.
I think that's why I really do push this idea that AI is not anywhere near what people are making it out to be. Because I have a very strong feeling that these AI videos from Sora have a significant amount of post-production that's done on them. I also think that it's not just a single prompt. I think it probably creates a prompt, and then that creates another prompt, and that creates another prompt, and they're training on their prompts to integrate different prompt areas to different parts of the frame. And then they're creating a final prompt that utilizes all of that training, all of that video content on other video content that they've generated to come up with the final result.
I could see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just you click on something. It's you spend days to weeks. And think about it. Why would they not do that? They want people to buy into this. They're only going to buy into it if and only if they have a professional quality output. And they don't have a professional quality output, which means they must have tried really, really hard to get a professional quality output, and they still can't. And they think what they're spitting out now is professional enough for people to be able to utilize it, which means that they are that far off the mark for what professional quality content actually looks like, which to me says that not only are they not anywhere near where they actually need to be, not anywhere near where they say they are, but they're also not even aware of how far away they are from hitting the mark.
Because I look at visual effects, right? Some films, it's crazy how great Jurassic Park, the original one, still look. It's mind-blowing that it still looks amazing. Because there are films that we mark as, oh, this was a technological advancement. And you go back to The Abyss and you look at it and think, it doesn't really hold up as well as we would like it to. But then you look at T2 and you kind of think, you know what? T1000 still looks kind of fire after all these years. That still looks pretty dope. So there's always technological advancements that make us go ooh and ah and just blow our minds at the time, but only a few of those still hold up today. So I think with the AI stuff, people are just blown away by the concept and they're overlooking the flaws intentionally. You mentioned the dating app thing before. It's like getting a bad relationship. The person's very attractive. You like a lot of things about them, but there's red flags all over the place, and you just intentionally ignore all the red flags. This ties back to Marvin and I watching too much dating content. So there's a lot of issues that people are subconsciously aware of, but it's just not triggering their brain just yet. But give it time, and if this stuff persists, people eventually will say, you know what? This isn't working the way it should be. It's kind of like, when you mentioned the whole spectacle versus story. At some point, we were able to overlook and forgive the fact that this looks really nice, but the story's kind of dumb. Until the story It just completely was non-existent. And then we said, we're kind of tired of Fast and Furious now. Now we're finally starting to see those numbers drop. Now we saw superhero movies take huge cuts in their box office haul from what they made previously because people have said this isn't enough anymore. So I think with AI, if it does gain traction, unless they can really develop and improve the technology fast enough, people will say, I kind of want to go to actual practical stuff, which is we see now. That's why Star Wars pivoted in their approach to how they do their shows. They were doing a ton of CGI, a ton of VFX in their films. Now they brought back the puppets. Now they brought back more set design. We're rolling it back.
Yeah. Which is sad because I don't even think it was because of the digital effects that they didn't have the weight and gravitas that they needed. It's primarily the writing that was lacking on those.
Yeah, but mainly it's just Hollywood likes to make money, but also like any business, how can we maximize profit and cut down overhead? And that's what's happening behind the scenes that led to the writer strikes is that they only had writers when the studio felt they needed them. To make a quick outline, provide us with a rough draft. And unfortunately, this was Marvel's technique that I don't know how many people know about, but Iron Man was filmed with a rough draft of the script.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have a completely complete idea. They said this is enough and they ran with it. Eventually, people started to say, hey, Marvel films, why is the writing not great? Why are there plot holes? Why is this stuff not really working? It's because, well, they took a strategy that worked at first, but it's not really a good strategy. You don't really want to start any job without having a complete idea of what you're actually going to do. Because what's going to happen is, like let's say you're on a construction and you just start building something. Oh, wait, I need this. Oh, wait, I need that. And you find yourself making multiple trips to the hardware store because you're figuring it out as you go. And with some things, it's way more important to actually have a fully fleshed out idea before you start working on something. Especially when you're dumping millions of dollars into a film. Why are you going in with just a rough idea of what you're doing? That makes no sense. But they got away with it for over a decade until we really start to say, hey, this isn't really good.
Mm-hmm.
You should spend more time planning things out. That's why writers demanded that, hey, from the beginning to the end of production, we want to be on staff. Don't just hire us when you're coming up with the idea and then hire us to fix your mistakes. No, we want to be there throughout the entire process. So you're always coming back to us and we can work together to fix and work and improve things the entire time instead of you're hiring multiple people to do the same job. That's what happened with film. That's why visual effects took a hit because Hollywood just kept saying, just make it bigger and better, just go crazy, go more over the top. But at some point, which is what I want to touch upon when you bring that stuff up, is we want to buy into it. It's somewhat plausible. We know cars can't fly into space. We want to believe that if Tom Cruise can do it, that it's actually possible. Even if he might be in front of a green screen for a shot, we want to believe that he actually did all his own stunts.
Right.
Like you said, what draws the audience in is because we can put ourselves in that situation and we can think maybe, possibly, I could live that experience. We don't want to just create something that's so out of touch, so out of reach, where you think, I'm disconnected because I just can't, again, put myself in that situation. I can't buy it. And that's the thing with AI. I think AI, sure, it may try to gain traction, but again, if AI starts doing weird, wacky, that doesn't exist in real life type of stuff, when you mentioned the uncanny valley, that was a huge hurdle that visual effects artists had to overcome for a long time because we
Mm-hmm.
know what people look like. We know how people behave, how people move, how the face react, our expressions, our eyes. I think that's the longest time for Uncanny Valley. The eyes just looked like there was no life behind them. And now, yeah, if given enough time and money, yes, we can achieve characters and performances that you wouldn't even know were computer generated. You wouldn't realize that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's because those were shots and things that were very well planned out and very well executed because they weren't rushed through the process because, they had to redo the third act of the film because it didn't test well. And now we
Mm-hmm.
have weeks to get something done that should have took months.
All right, I think we're going to end things there for this week. Please tune in next week as we continue our coverage on the visual effects industry. Thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.